And our fantastic RPG Escape 2020 continues with the legendary Hal Mangold, who is a designer.
Legendary strong. Strong.
I like to start off, lead with the strong superlatives. You've helmed some fantastic projects both in the past, the present, and you've got some fantastic and exciting things coming out in the future under several different hats and several different inputs.
I have too many hats. Yes,
that's what we call a first world problem. For those who are familiar with it, you produced the Deadlands system.
I was the brand manager back then. Shane Hensley was the mastermind behind all of that, and along with Matt Forbeck at the time. But yeah, I was the brand manager for a while back in the late '90s and stuff, and helped the second edition come to life and everything. So yeah.
And you also have got some very important products in your hand right now, which are getting a lot of press right now. The Expanse, of course, as a TV series on Amazon, its fourth season just came out. But you folks are putting out The Expanse based on the books, which is
the books,
what inspired
that's led to some interesting stuff. Where, for instance, we can take inspiration from the TV shows, but we specifically cannot look like them at all. Which is it's something to balance out, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Yeah, we've been really lucky in terms of some of the media properties we got to work on. Like Dragon Age was one that we've had a lot of fun putting together.
Which was a game our producer Jay Petrovsky speaks very highly of.
So what?
And the fifth season also is another a literary project also, a product that was based on.
Yep, and obviously we did Song of Ice and Fire as well. Sort of before the TV show started and stuff. But yeah, our newest literary thing will be based off of N.K. Jemisin's the fifth season book. So we're excited about that.
So is there a feeling? Do you feel a sense of responsibility and stewardship when you are basing products on
Absolutely.
Products on
yeah, this? I mean, we work very closely with the authors and stuff. And I mean, that's one advantage of working with off the literary property is we're not dealing with a TV production companies. I've worked on some stuff that was based on media stuff when we worked with on the DC Comics game. We did a version of Mutants and Masterminds, our superhero game Mutants and Masterminds based on that. And it's a very different experience than working with authors. And authors are really, it's a direct responsibility, but at least you're getting it straight from the mouth of the people who created the thing. If they approve your stuff, it's correct. Years ago, we also worked on the Black Company. We did a Black Company game for back during the D20 days for 3rd edition, and we got to work directly with Glenn Cook. And we also did Thieves' World, if anybody remembers that sort of venerable fantasy property.
Sure, absolutely.
With Lynn Abbey. Lynn was a freaking dream. She was great. She was probably one of my favorite people I've ever worked with directly.
My own D&D 5 edition game is based kind of on tropes of the Thieves' World, going back to the 1980s, Tales of the Vulgar Unicorn.
You can still dig those books up places if you look for them. They're still out there.
Awesome. And with Atomic Overmind, what kind of things are you doing with your Atomic Overmind?
So my side company is Atomic Overmind
Right.
Press, and it was sort of I developed that because I didn't have enough free time.
You had too much free time.
Too much free time. Yeah, no, that was not actually true. So I did, and there were projects that I wanted to do with friends that I'd made in the gaming industry that I hadn't been able to do over the years. And one of the primary ones is Kenneth Hite, who is here today at the RPG Escape where we are taping this.
Is that the Tour to Lovecraft?
Tour to Lovecraft, yes. So I've done some game stuff. He wrote a game called The Day After Ragnarok, which is a Savage Worlds game, which we also translated to Hero and Fate, as I remember it. But then he also has a side of him writing about literary criticism in a very approachable and amusing fashion. And years ago we produced a first edition of essays that he wrote originally on LiveJournal, I believe. And we jokingly said, "Hey, we should make a book out of that," and then we made a book out of it. So
always do sober what you said you.
Yeah, absolutely,
anyway.
Yes. So years later, it came down to we had a chance to. He'd written some essays on Lovecraftian places, and we thought that putting together a book of that stuff would be really cool as well. So we did a tour. The first one was called Tour to Lovecraft: The Tales, because it dealt directly with the stories. This one's called Tour to Lovecraft: The Destinations. And in the course of kickstarting that, we thought, well, we could go back and just expand the old book too. So we did that. So we're actually producing a 2-volume set of an updated and substantially expanded version of the first book, Tour to Lovecraft: The Tales, which won an Origins Award, as I remember. And then producing the second book as well.
How robust is Lovecraft fandom?
It's pretty robust. I mean, Cthulhu is everywhere, right? Now I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that speaks to Lovecraft fandom per se, because obviously Cthulhu has become sort of a pop culture phenomenon, but it's pretty substantial, I think. I mean, he's he's a very problematic figure. He's obviously was in addition to being a seminal creator in American horror, he's also was a horrible racist and anti-Semite,
Sure.
and that's something you have to account for when you deal with it.
And I think that the industry is doing that, and it's important to have the conversation, regardless of where. I think that the healthiest thing about it is that the conversation is being had.
I think if you don't put that out front, that you know that and are acknowledging it and are internalizing that. It's people are going to give you some side eye about your treatment with Lovecraft.
Sure.
And I think that's fair because he is a problematic figure in literature. But his influence is undeniable. His ideas and the world that he sort of conjured up along with other collaborators and the people he's influenced is just so influential in American horror, up to and including Cthulhu and pop culture.
Yes.
That I think it would be a shame to dispose of him completely. There's a robust fandom out there that ranges from the pop cultural all the way down to the serious literary criticism. There's a convention it's held every 2 years in Providence, Rhode Island, called Necronomicon Providence, which features that complete breadth of stuff. And we went there this past year and had a great time. And I've also produced another book with Robin Laws. He wrote a book based on sort of Robert W. Chambers' Yellow King stories, which have been sort of the mythos has expanded and sort of roped in all these other people. And
retconned some of it in also
exactly.
After the fact, which is great.
And my friend Shane Ivey over at Arc Dream Publishing produced an annotated Yellow King, which is all of Chambers' Yellow King stories, which was annotated by Ken as well. So Ken is pretty steeped in this sort of stuff. So I would say there's certainly enough robust fandom for this, and it was robust enough to fund these two books being produced. So that was certainly good.
As a publisher, as a designer, having seen things from both the supply and the demand side.
Yeah, because I've been gaming since I was 9, so
What do you think is really? What do you think the industry is hungry for right now?
Oh goodness. Well, currently D&D. I mean, it's the biggest property right now, and obviously the online, the live play movement has been a transformative thing in the industry, and it has brought a lot of people in at this point. So in terms of what the industry is doing right now, I think it's kind of gotten a lot of it. We've got recognition. We're showing up in Forbes and Vice magazine, and Vice Online magazine, and all kinds of places. There was a New York Times story a couple of years ago.
Yes, recently.
And this extends to hobby games as a whole too. Like my friend Darren Watts designed the We Rate Dogs game, and he was on Marketplace, a couple of weeks ago for interviews and stuff like that. So I think the recognition that we've gotten has been really, really great. And I think that was the thing we wanted for a long time. Is a lot of nerds were always hoping that people would their hobbies would be cool. I mean, there's some backlash with that too, because we're used to being iconoclasts, and all of a sudden people are all these normal people are.
Of course, we're now our parents' age.
We are.
So now we can actually, in a way, the people who were our parents' age who didn't necessarily understand this at the time. It's kind of interesting because we do understand it, and we were steeped in it from the jump.
I think that one thing that the industry has wanted and is getting is largely is a professionalization of things from top to bottom. And I don't necessarily mean a corporatization of it. I just people dealing with it as for instance, the retail store that where we're recording this is a very, very well-run retail store. It's clean, it's inviting, it's friendly. And for many, many years that wasn't the fact. A lot of game stores were clubhouses. I've been in some that were absolute dumps that just happened to sell games back in the day.
And uninviting,
exclusionary,
exclusionary. No, you're 100%.
Absolutely.
But that's very much not the case now.
I think the broadening of acceptance for all kinds of people playing as well. I mean, it is undeniable. This was a white dude hobby for the longest time, and as someone who's been doing it since I was about since 1978 or so, whenever anybody complains about that, about who are these, why are we trying for diversity and everything like that, and I'm like, we've always wanted more people in if we had any sense. I mean, it was a refuge from a lot of people. For socially, but I don't think we're at that point anymore, really.
No.
And there are other compensatory facts for where people can find their tribe and online communities and things like that. But I just think that the diversifying of the gaming is great, and at least the better gaming experiences, as well as the different types of games. So.
Where can people keep in touch with what you got going on?
Let's see. Probably the Green Ronin publishing Twitter account is the best for that. Green Ronin, you're correct. My goodness, I mispronounced my own company's name. It's my business partner, Chris Pramus, will have my head on a pike. Yeah, that'd be the worst. So that's one of our best places. We have a pretty robust social media presence on Twitter and on Facebook and stuff like that. For Atomic Overmind Press, we've been keeping kind of a low profile because we've got, in addition to the Tour de Lovecraft project, I've got another project that I kickstarted called Rain. It was a game designed by Greg Stolze. and it's sort of it's almost like a role-playing game of running kingdoms or organizations. And he did an edition of that a couple of years ago, and we decided to sort of bring it back. Yeah,
so this is Reign with an R-E-I-G-N.
Yes, it is.
Because in my notes, I have the homonym there. I spelled it like the...
It is Reign. The original thing was one self-contained book, which had a couple of different worlds in it.
That sounds fun.
It was cool. And then for this time around, we split it into 2 books, a system book and a world book, and then we did a 3rd book from the Kickstarter, which is a bunch of, I guess what you could call drifts. Just interesting, like somebody taking the system and adapting it to, like, there's one thing in there which is a giant worldwide conspiracy game. There's another that's the samurai role-playing game setting. There's another that's a magical high school game and stuff like that. So we're hoping to produce all of those and get those out this summer if everything goes correctly. And Tour to Lovecraft, hopefully, I'm thinking maybe about 2 or 3 months. We should be able to get that out into the stores too. So that's where that is.
Hal Mangold, this was fun.
Thanks a lot, man.
Much.
Appreciate it.
To be continued.
Great to talk. Yeah,
Stay with us.
Appreciate it.